which I did last time as well, although you saw my email that through some unknown technical glitch it did not record, but I'm going to do my best this time to get that video made available. So we'll hope for the best there. But welcome, thanks for being here. And I'm glad you are here. It looks like we're missing some folks, so although I think more are going to be popping on here. I know we had kind of inconsistent bad weather across our sprawling AEA, and some people may not have been working today, and some of you were there all day. So thanks for being here at the end of the day. I am going to share my screen, and let's go back here. Okay. If you remember, I guess first reminder here, if you're with us here, if you would remember that there is a sign-in sheet where I'm showing you on the screen here where it says click here for today, the 19th of February. If you would go ahead and sign in if you're joining us in class today, that would be great.
Other one down there?
Hi.
Sorry.
No, that's okay.
Okay. All right. If you remember last time, we had made it halfway through our shared reading module, and the intent is that we're going to kind of finish up with that today and then move on to two other topics today, including predictable chart writing, kind of a really nice strategy that can be used for writing activities for students that have pretty significant delays, and I think you'll find that to be a really good strategy. I wanted to just a quick recap review, and we're going to pick up with the video in just a second here, where we left off in the shared reading module. And I think we had ended with an activity where we were kind of talking through key components of the strategy for shared reading. And just a quick review here, a big theme that was talked through in that module was this idea of CAR, comment, ask, respond. So that's really this basic structure for shared reading. And remember, a key thing about shared reading is just the interaction with the student. And trying to engage them and gain interest in the reading activity. So there was a comment with a significant wait time. Teacher would make a comment, wait time of 10 to 15 seconds. Ask for or invite participation, again with a significant wait time, and then respond. So, and the respond being the teacher would repeat and maybe add a little bit more. Referencing using core vocabulary. And just these were key things that we hope are happening in a shared reading experience. Just encouraging communication, again, this idea of repeated opportunities for our students to use their core boards or devices, but using core vocabulary to communicate, through this reading that's shared with the teacher. Attributing meaning, we've talked a lot about that. Even pre-symbolic communication, when even vocalizations and things like that students may use, taking opportunities to attribute meaning to what that student might be communicating, and then modeling, just modeling over and over again use of core vocabulary and the symbols. So that was just kind of a recap of some of the big ideas. I'm going to close that. And with that, I'm just going to go ahead, I'm queued up here where we left off, and let's just kind of continue the second half of the shared reading module.
Now that you have an understanding of what shared reading is and the key instructional practices that support a good shared reading experience, let's talk about the specifics of what you will look for when planning and evaluating a shared reading interaction that involves the use of Universal Core. It is vitally important that students have an individual communication system that meets their access needs. This communication must be available to the greatest extent possible all day, every day. Since shared reading is all about the communicative interaction between the adult and the students, the communication system is required during shared reading. While adults should encourage and attribute meaning to all communication efforts, the Universal Core provides a means of modeling ways that students could use symbols to communicate more effectively. Choosing appropriate books is another element that can impact the communicative experience adults and students have during shared reading. Length and complexity are two issues to address when choosing a book. Select books that are short enough that they can be read and reread in a single session, and make sure that the language complexity of the book is a good match for the students. At the same time, consider students' interests and experiences when selecting books. There will be much more to talk about if you select a book that you can relate to your students' knowledge base and interests. If you have students who cannot see pictures in books, be certain to select books where the bulk of the story is told by the words and not by the pictures. Many picture books use the illustrations to tell the story. Even with good tactual support, students with significant visual impairments who are emerging in their understandings of literacy will find it very hard to interact during shared reading of a book in which the story is told through the pictures. Once you select a book, plan to read it for 3 to 5 days. You can read more than one book at a time, but make sure you read each book often enough that it becomes familiar to the students. After you've selected a book, spend time planning comments you can make on each page. We literally put sticky notes on the book to help us remember these planned comments when we are interacting with students during shared reading. It helps us juggle the book, our role in modeling how to use core vocabulary, and our role in attributing meaning and building upon the students' efforts to communicate. You see an example here of a book called I Love All Kinds of Music from Tar Heel Reader. You might plan to model I like on the first page, it good on the second, and more on the third. You should plan different comments to use each time you read the book. Furthermore, when adults use the planned comments during shared reading, they should use a universal core communication system that is like the systems used by the students in the group. If students access their core boards by pointing, then teachers can model by pointing. If students access their core boards using partner-assisted scanning, then adults should model how to make comments using universal core with partner-assisted scanning. It may not be feasible to model with each student's system every time, but all students should have a chance to learn from others who communicate in the same way they will. Pause for activity 2. Before beginning with any book,
All right.
the first step is to connect it to something.
All right, I'm going to open up. If you, some of you may have made yourself a printed copy of the handout, but I'm going to put it up on the screen here. And you, of course, can pull it up as well. But handout 2 looks like this. Okay, and again, this is, of course, what you're seeing here on the left is just a copy of the basic core board of core vocabulary words. But what we want to do through this activity, and have you kind of do this independently, or think the process through independently, and then we'll kind of come back together and talk about it. But the instructions here: read each page of the text provided and use single words or combine words from the overlay, meaning from the core vocabulary selections here, to create a phrase for each page. So these should be phrases a student might say during shared reading. So just to explain what this handout is really referring to, This is basically a book that, for example, a book that you might get from Tar Heel Reader. This one is called R is Really Important, and this will be like the cover page. And so what you're seeing here is each page of the book. So the picture and the text that would be there. So R is very important to pirates. Every pirate needs a chart, but without the R, it's just a chat. Okay, so and so on. So you can see a variety of pages here that go along with that book. So the intent of the activity is just take a couple minutes here to think through, if you were using this book with one of your students or your students, what are some comments that you could plan using core vocabulary, phrases? You know, again, the intent is modeling use of these words and encouraging encouraging students to comment as well. So I'm going to stop talking. Just take a few minutes to see if you can come up with some phrases or single words from the core vocabulary that would go along with each of these pages, and jot those down, and then we'll kind of talk through it as a group. Okay, let's kind of just have a discussion about this. We'll kind of go page by page, and then just and remember, you'll have to unmute your mic, but just encourage people to throw out ideas about what you might have as a comment that you might like to use if you were doing the shared reading activity with a student. Notice that one interesting recommendation they gave, or one thought that they gave, was they said they, meaning Project Core people, even put sticky notes. So they would have a book like this one, and again, encouraging it to be used not just once, but maybe over a period of a week. So the students are reading it multiple times, and even possibly your planning could be just a simple sticky note on each page with some planned comments. So what about this first page? Kind of
Ron, I'm sorry. There's a few of us who can't see the screen. We messaged, but I just have a black screen. I have no idea what we're looking at here. There we go. Now I see it. Thank you.
Yes, that was. Thank you for telling me. I'm not sure what happened there. Everything was okay with the video, correct? That was coming from?
Yeah. All of that's okay. So just a handout. So I can see it now.
Thank you for catching that before I.
I tried to look it up myself, but I couldn't access it either. So I thought I better tell you.
I'm sorry. I'm glad you did. Okay, well, whether you looked at it ahead of time or whether you're just looking at it now, we're going to talk through this together. So this would be kind of like a title page. R is Really Important by Jane Farrell. This is just our book. Picture this as either a Tar Heel Reader kind of a book, either maybe used online on an iPad or possibly printed out in a booklet format. So what about this cover page? Anybody have any thoughts or ideas of a planned comment just for the title page, really? Thinking about your core board.
what do you see?
Okay.
Maybe just look as a prompt that you're going to start. You need their attention.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Say, turn the page.
Good. Good. Yeah, absolutely. Especially for that cover page there, just kind of you're just pointing out that it's the beginning of the book and an encouragement to go on. All good ideas. Let's just try a few more here. What about the next page? R is very important to pirates. Any thoughts on some plan comments?
Something like, can you see the letter R?
Okay. Good. Good. Or any, on any of these, if a picture might be of high interest to the student, some variation of you like or probing to see if the student likes it. I was just thinking too, I'll jump back just briefly here, just even on the cover page, when when you're looking at your core vocabulary, someone had mentioned look, absolutely, but there's notice that, or remember that there's also turn. Turn is a core vocabulary word, so turn the page, and open. Open is also a core vocabulary. So even just that, early literacy skill of opening a book and turning the page and moving it.
Ron, how about something like, can you make an R to where the child would maybe be, using a writing implement or just using their finger in the air? That would incorporate make and can you. So an action.
Absolutely, I like that. And that would vary depending on the student, where that student is in terms of their literacy development. But for sure, I mean, for some students that are at a particular stage of letter identification and even physical writing, absolutely, would be a great thing. How about this one? Every pirate needs a chart. Any thoughts about that one?
Oh, I don't know. Oh, bummer. Maybe, do you have a chart? Asking them to connect to themselves if they're at that level.
Okay. Meaning a chart that they might be using in the classroom or something like that.
Yeah.
It's a different kind of a chart, but yeah, absolutely.
Even something simple like I go.
Oh, good. How about this one? But without the R, it's just a chat.
You could say they all need an R.
Okay. Good. Or then you've got a visual there of two people talking, chatting. I mean, you could ask students do you chat? Do you have a talk with someone? So you can see some options there as well. But this one, R is totally important to pirates. And by the way, the fact that this happens to be a letter-themed book is not, I don't know if that was intentional. It was just one example, but certainly a lot of books won't be that way. But this one does happen to have a letter theme, obviously. Anybody have any thoughts about the R is totally important to pirates?
Even I like in regards to pirates or R, whichever one direction you want to go.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. And, if you have, if you just happen to have a student with an R, in their name, some opportunities there, you can imagine that you could pull that in as well. Then we have the left side of our ship is called port. Anybody have any thoughts about that one? One thing I'm thinking of, if there's, and of course this depends, on the interest of the student. What if that student saw that picture of a ship and had a really excited reaction, or pointed or laughed or had an excited expression. You could, again, do you like it? I mean, that's always an option if and then that's an opportunity to attribute meaning too. If that student liked boats, or if they were very interested in that picture or something like that. Any other thoughts on that one with the ship coming up there? Well, how about that last one there, but without the R, it's just a pot.
I think those examples might be a good opportunity to point out the same and the difference between the words. So what letters are the same and what letters are different?
I like that. Absolutely. Okay. All right, good. So again, just a little example of a book that you might use, and just thinking through this big idea of planning comments. So if you're going to be using a book for a period of time, just planning some of the comments that'll allow you to do that modeling. All right, close that out. And I'm going to jump here, but before I go back to the video here, I just wanted to remind you, I think we've looked at this before, but I have a couple kind of sub-bullets under, today's content, but these instructional planning forms are on the project course site itself, but I mean, there's a direct link here, and I just wanted to point out that there's the self-reflection forms that we've talked a little bit about, that for those of you doing the project as kind of as a credit opportunity, where someone could observe and point out, kind of do a fidelity check. But there's also, let's see, there we are, instructional planning form. That is just very simple, and there's one for other areas we'll talk about later. As far as we haven't talked about these other areas, there's just a form that you could use for planning. But for shared reading, what we're talking about right now, you can see just a form like this if it would be useful to you. On one hand, they gave the example that you could use simple sticky notes on a book, for some planned comments as to kind of help you with that. But just something like this, even what's my theme, what dates, or what's the book I'm working with. Page number and core-based comments, and you can see this is set up as just a first, second, third, fourth, and fifth read. That I guess the first thing is that's kind of reminding you that that's kind of the recommended approach. You're not just going to read a book one time with a student, but over multiple times, and just an opportunity to think about some planned comments that you would use with that student on the different pages. So this is just a tool that could be used. I wanted to remind you that is there. Close that out. And let's keep on going with our video.
something that you have taught or students have experienced. Sometimes the connection is difficult, but if you are going to read, "I love all kinds of music," you might start by saying something as simple as, "I know you like music," or "This book is about music. Who likes music?" If we want students to participate in communication exchanges on a page-by-page basis, we must slow down our reading process to provide students an opportunity to participate. Adequate wait time literally means that after reading a page or making a comment about the page, the adult pauses for 5, 10, or more seconds and says nothing. This processing time is vital for students. When we interrupt this processing with questions or encouragement, students often have to start processing all over again. Waiting quietly provides a student with an opportunity to try to interact using whatever means is available. One of the tricks to a good shared reading experience is for the adults in the room to become highly attuned to what the student is doing while the book is being read. Everyone needs to learn to recognize communicative attempts or behavioral changes and respond to them. Our response to those communicative attempts will often be in the form of modeling the universal core. For example, if the student reaches out to the edge of the book, the adult can attribute meaning. "Oh, do you want to turn the page?" And then models turn on the universal core board. Another student might repeatedly touch more on her own universal core board. Again, the adult would attribute meaning, saying something like, "More? Do you want more?" In this case, the adult touches more on the universal core board while saying "more," and then touch "want" and "more" on the universal core while saying, "Do you want more?" The last thing for adults to attend to is their own level of enthusiasm. Students are going to be much more likely to engage and interact if the adult reads with enthusiasm in a way that fosters a joy of reading and participating. On the Project Core website, you will find a planning form that will help you plan universal core-based comments to use during shared reading, and a self-evaluation or observation form that lists each of the features of shared reading described in this training. This concludes the module. Your feedback is important to us. Please take a couple of minutes to complete a brief survey.
All right. Okay, so share it. I'm sorry, I'm jumping back and forth here. I'm trying to move my toolbar. There we go. Okay, so that's shared reading. Some of the key components there. And as far as, again, materials that you may want to use, if again, I just really want to encourage you, if you've not gotten familiar with Tar Heel Reader, the website is here. I think we looked at that last time. Just really a kind of a invaluable resource of books that you can access. And really, for those of you, which is most of you or many of you that are teachers that are doing the DLM alternate assessment training, just a reminder that when students are doing the reading assessments through DLM, the format of the books that you're seeing there really is Tar Heel Reader. It's you're seeing the books in there, and so you know, if you're working with them in that format, it's really going to give them good experiences. You know, because that's the kind of reading material that they're gonna be doing with you in DLM testing. And also for those of you that work with the K through 6 age range, that early literacy alternate assessment, where you're collecting kind of a portfolio evidence on literacy, you know that some of that rating involves recording how does a student respond shared reading. And so really shared reading is almost a required instructional routine to kind of collect the data for that assessment. So, all right, let's jump into predictable chart writing. We're going to jump into the video. We'll have a chance to stop for an activity, which I think we're going to do that activity kind of together. It's more of the process of thinking through what could be a format that I could use with my students to set up a rating activity, a predictable rating activity. So I think when we get to that, we'll talk through it more as a group. But really valuable strategy here, relatively simple strategy. And so let's jump in and learn a little bit more about that.
Welcome to the Project Core Professional Development modules. This module, Predictable Chart Writing, emphasizing core vocabulary, is designed to describe predictable chart writing and explain how to emphasize teaching and use of core vocabulary during this instructional routine. Project Core is being conducted by the Center for Literacy and Disability Studies, a unit in the Department of Allied Health Sciences at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Predictable chart writing is a multi-step group activity. It provides a framework for shared focus on print concepts, writing, and interaction around a topic. It also provides opportunities to support communication, develop understandings of concepts about print, and build early skills in word identification, spelling, capitalization, and punctuation. Predictable chart writing has 5 steps. In step 1, the teacher and students work together to write the chart, with each student contributing at least one idea. In step 2, the group reads together, talks about the chart, and looks for specific elements. In step 3, students are given a sentence strip with the sentence they helped create written on it. Students read and reread their own sentence and then cut the sentence into individual words. They finish step 3 by reassembling the words into the complete sentence. In step 4, students collaborate to assemble sentences from the chart during a game called Be the Sentence. Finally, in step 5, the class creates a book using the sentences from the chart. Depending on the skills of your students, each step can be completed on a separate day, or multiple steps can be combined into a single session. Let's go over each step in depth. During step 1, the group creates the chart together. Here you see an example of what a completed chart looks like. The topic or title of the chart in this example is Cold Outside. The teacher selected the topic or title of the chart and selected the sentence stem, I put on. In this case, each of the words in the sentence stem is one of the 36 words in the Universal Core. This means the teacher can model saying the words in the stem each time a sentence is added to the chart. In addition to selecting the title and the words for the sentence stem, the teacher has to decide how to provide students with an array of choices to use in completing their sentence. Some students may be able to make choices by pointing to pictures or symbols that the teacher offers. Others may be best supported to make choices through partner-assisted scanning or eye gaze. Still others may require real objects to make choices because they are not yet using or understanding symbols. It is important to plan ahead ways for all students to make choices to complete their sentence and contribute to the chart. While completing the chart, teachers should take care to line up each of the words in the sentence stem. This is the repeated part of the chart. It features the core words we are teaching our students to use to communicate, and carefully lining up the words helps students see the similarities and differences among the words. The sentence stem also builds important awareness of concept of word as students begin to see the groups of letters that form words and the spaces between them. In writing the chart, the teacher says each word, models it on the Universal Core board, and writes it. At the end of the stem, one student makes a choice to complete the sentence. Finally, the teacher writes the student's name at the end of the sentence. This completed chart reads, I put on a hat. I put on a coat. I put on a hat. I put on a coat. I put on boots. I put on gloves. I put on a hat. Note that several students selected the same words to complete the sentence, and that's completely fine. In selecting the topics and stems for the chart, be creative. There are thousands of topics that could support emphasizing core vocabulary in sentence stems, providing the repetition with variety that we know is so important. Let's take a look at a few examples. The sentence stem, I put on, could be used to write about the colors of leaves added to a class tree with choices like red leaves, yellow leaves, green leaves. I put on could be used to write about funny costumes with choices like a cape, a mask, glasses. I put on could be used to write about ice cream toppings with choices like whipped cream, chocolate sauce, and sprinkles. The sentence stem, I like, can be applied to hundreds of topics, including things like favorite sports, pets, school activities. The sentence stem, I want to go, could be used to write about topics like vacation, field trips, restaurants. There are thousands of chart topics that can be supported with sentence stems that emphasize core words. The second step of predictable chart writing is to reread the chart, talk about it, and analyze it for a few carefully selected text elements. The primary goal of this step is to help students focus on specific aspects of the text. Depending on a student's abilities, the goals of this step may be different. For students who are beginning communicators, it's very valuable to encourage students to use their universal core vocabulary communication systems to say the words in the sentence stem. For emergent readers and writers, the focus can also be on print awareness. This includes teaching students that print carries meaning and developing concepts of sentences, words, and letters. Start this important step by rereading the chart while emphasizing the repetition of the sentence stem and modeling what a fluent reading of the text sounds like. Next, read the chart again while encouraging the students to read along. While reading as a group, you can allow students to be the pointer. Using a classroom pointer, a marker, or a headlight, students can take turns leading the group in the reading. After rereading the entire chart, talk as a group about each sentence. You might talk about why students made the choices they did. Once you've read the chart a couple of times, you are ready to analyze the chart for key elements. This is done by introducing the elements of text that you want the students to focus on. For example, you may ask the students to find any words in the chart that are also on their core vocabulary boards. Students work together to examine each sentence. For students who are unable to talk or point, try using partner-assisted scanning. This is done by having the adult slowly point to each word in the sentence. The student then tells the adult to stop using a gesture, vocalization, switch, or other means when the adult is pointing to a desired word. Let's look at a few examples. As you talk about the chart, students can talk about not only their own contribution, but also all of the things their friends added to the chart. Consider the class contributions for our initial example for the topic, cold outside. Some students chose the same things to put on. This provides opportunity to talk about same and different, modeling core vocabulary as you say things like, Sarah's sentence says, I put on a hat. Let's find the sentences that are the same and different as she points to same and different on the Universal Core Board. Then the teacher reads each sentence and asks students to help her decide if it is the same or different from Sarah's. During step 3, students work with sentence strips. For this step, the adult creates 2 sentence strips for each student with their individual sentence. Students get one to try to read. The adult can support this by pointing to and saying each word while modeling words on the Universal Core as appropriate. After reading and rereading the sentence, students are supported in cutting the sentence into individual words. Some students will be able to use scissors independently to try to cut, but many will be unable to cut the sentence independently. Adults can help these students by running a finger across the sentence strip and asking the student to indicate, using a gesture, vocalization, or switch, where they would like you to cut. The whole point of cutting the sentence into individual words is to help students develop an understanding of the concept of word and begin to recognize the place where one word ends and another begins. As such, avoid drawing lines, making dots, or otherwise cueing students regarding where they should cut. After the sentence is cut into its individual words, ask the students to arrange their words to recreate their sentence. After each attempt, read the words in the order the student placed them. In this example, Kiana has arranged the words to say, "On boots put I." The adult read it while pointing to each word and asked Kiana, "Does that sound right?" Then the adult referred back to the chart to read the sentence in the correct order before asking Kiana to try again. The adult repeated the process one more time before guiding the student to find the words in the order needed to recreate the sentence. The fourth step of predictable chart writing is to play a game called Be the Sentence. During this activity, the adult writes the words from each sentence on a full-size sheet of paper. It is only necessary to write the words from the sentence frame once. Each word is printed with a large, thick marker in a font that is large enough for students to see from the front of the class. Students are given individual words from the sentence, and the adults read them aloud and model how to say the core words from the sentence using the universal core. Then, adults work with students to move them into order to recreate the sentence. Adults should work to give students as much independence as possible in determining the order. And students who do not have words should be encouraged to say if the sentence created is the same or different from the sentence on the chart. As long as students remain engaged, adults can continue to give students words that make the sentence and work with students to create the sentences by arranging themselves in order. The final step of predictable chart writing is to make a class book. First, adults ask students to select an image that reflects their sentences. This can be done using magazines, photographs, or images from the internet, but adults should gather a small set of images ahead of time and give students choices rather than spending the entire session searching for images. This is an important step when making the book because it provides students the opportunity to show ownership and make their own connection to the writing. Adults might work with students to make the book using tarheelreader.org or other computer or internet-based bookmaking tools. Step 5 is a really important component of predictable chart writing because it results in a permanent record of student work. Often written work is on a chart, computer, or whiteboard where it doesn't get saved. Having a book provides an artifact that students can return to over and over again. These books have additional meaning to students because they reflect individual students and the class as a whole. Frequently, predictable chart writing books become a classroom favorite. Pause for activity 1.
Okay, let's just take a few minutes and kind of talk through what we've learned so far here. I'm going to pull up this handout. One moment. Oops. All right, and I kind of suggested we would just kind of talk through this together. You can see that the activity would be if we were, we're kind of all over the place and independent. If we were in small groups here, we might do more small group discussions on, what could an activity look like. But let's just do that as a group and have you share some of your ideas. So, so you can see there's just this handout just showing, what could a title be or what could a theme be, and focusing on the sentence stem. And I guess one thing I wanted to say or remind you of, they did a nice job in the presentation of, they gave you 3 examples, and these are just examples, but I put on, I like, and I want to go as kind of sentence stems, heavy on, core vocabulary words. And they pointed out that those 3 things, I put on, I like, and I want to go, could have hundreds of variations. In other words, they're highly used vocabulary, but they could lead to all kinds of, different topics where the kids could write about. I want to go, regarding trips and places they're going, things that they like, things that they're putting on, clothing, and so forth. So there's that idea of repetition with variety that they pointed out. So those were some good sentence stems they talked about. They also talked about a range of options, you know, to help students complete the sentences. So in the one example that they showed you visually, you know, the put on example, kind of getting into winter clothes, gloves, hat, coat, boots, and then how would you present those options? Symbols, pictures, or objects. So they were pointing out that some students might need more concrete examples like objects, and wanted you to kind of think through that. But I mean, the theme all the way through was, when you're doing these writing activities and when you're discussing them, lots of modeling using the core board. And you can imagine, you know, since they're kind of illustrating using chart paper, you know, to write these sentences, and then going on to use sentence strips, you can imagine that poster version of the core vocabulary might be a really good tool to have. You know, if you had a chart paper up where you were doing such a writing activity and you had your core board right next to it on the wall, could be a really good opportunity for you to model, knowing that the students would have their own boards or systems as well. But okay, so I'll just open up for ideas. When anybody want to share, I mean, as you've thought through this, and maybe some of you have done predictable chart writing. If you have, I'd love for you to share ideas that you've done. But can anybody just think of, you know, thinking of their student or students that they might be working with, you know, an example of where they might go with implementing this kind of a strategy for a writing lesson? Anybody just have a thought that you want to share, just to throw ideas out?
Maybe a classroom chore one where it's I can help, and then the different chores that the classroom has.
Great, I like that. Thank you.
One could be I go, and they could talk about the places they go outside of school or in school.
Absolutely. I like that.
For writing, the whole class could work on an I can make a, and then they could do their letters or their name or something that pertains to them personally, but
Okay.
something that they can make.
Great, I like that.
I have a class that does like the schedule and stuff in the morning, so maybe it could be more of a collective kind of thing and say we, I don't know, next we do something like that.
Yeah, so like a collective schedule, you know, yeah, getting into what we're going to do as far as where we're going. You bet.
I've seen this after like a field trip where they could write I see, which probably should be I saw, but I see, and then different things that they saw on their field trip.
Great, thanks, Brandy.
And then the teacher will sometimes make those into books. She'll cut that apart and put a picture with it and make a book for the kids to go back and read in the classroom.
Great, yeah, and that's and you know, that's really a recommended step. You know, that Project Core is, you know, very much supporting that. I mean, they pointed out that it's a great artifact. You know, well, it's for number one, it's an artifact of student learning, and it's a book that students can go back and read and review. And they pointed out too that you know, we took a quick look at Tar Heel Reader, and it's a source of books that kids can read, you can print, etc. But there's the other side of Tar Heel Reader where you can publish books. So I mean, you could use that application to create your books as well and share them. And that's kind of a neat thing for kids to learn as well too. You know, if they've created a book that we're going to publish it and it's going to be out there, and for others to select if they can use that as well. So. Great. Any other ideas of maybe stems or ideas where you think you might be able to go with a writing activity like this.
I think if you could bring in favorite cartoon characters, that's always really motivating. So I like, and then everybody just lists like their favorite. I know, like I have a student that Paw Patrol is all he wants to talk about.
Okay. Absolutely. Cartoon characters, superheroes, yeah, absolutely. High interest kinds of things like that. Just that idea of, I like, yeah, I mean, just when you think of the possibilities from just a very simple STEM like I like, gets them into using their core words, and absolutely, good example.
And that reminds, oh, sorry.
That's okay. I was just going to comment on one thing. I don't know if the blank always has to be at the end of the sentence. Maybe it does, but could you use it in a way where you could say, I can put blank in here, and then work with the kids on learning where things go, or what different items belong in a refrigerator, or what different items belong in a kitchen or a bedroom, or things like that, to where I don't know if that's something that could be done with the blank in the middle of the sentence. I don't know. What does everyone think?
Yeah, any thoughts from the group? I'll throw my gut reaction is, I mean, I think you could do that. I mean, maybe the one limitation, if it's in the middle of a sentence, is, I mean, maybe it's looking for one word versus, when you have the sentence stem and then something else, sometimes it can be more than, it can go beyond one word. But I mean, I think the principle definitely could apply, like the example you gave. Yeah, I really do. I mean, the intent would be there again, using core vocabulary and in kind of this early writing experience. So, yeah.
I was just going to say, I was kind of thinking the same thing. We're working a lot on in and on, and thinking about like the things that are in the toy cupboard or the things that are in a bathroom. Those are great.
Yeah.
Those to keep working on. So.
Yeah, I like that. What is in the toy cupboard, and just and maybe even for some students, even using the physical objects to illustrate that it's in there. What are these things? And that's, yeah. Thank you, Brandy. Were you trying to pop in a minute ago? I just wanted to go.
Yeah, I was, and then I thought, well, maybe this wouldn't pertain, but somebody mentioned cartoons, and it made me think that one of my teachers that uses the First Author series of writing, this kind of correlates with that series, and they really suggest you try to pick topics that the kids like to write about. And I just have one kid that's like a Dora freak, kind of like the Paw Patrol thing, and but I kind of like how that is set up, because it really encourages you to have, like they say, to have the pictures ready. They have some kind of available for you, but kind of set up a format for you to help with your writing, the chart writing. So I don't know if does anybody use First Author? Okay, well, if you're ever interested, I think our library has a copy that you could check out, but it goes nicely with the idea of predictable chart writing.
Yeah, thanks, Brandy. Yeah, the AA Media Center does. In fact, I believe there's 2 copies of that are there, and so for sure, it's something that some of you may want to look at. But absolutely. I was neat too. They gave that step that was kind of like be the sentence. I mean, and you can kind of I almost wish we had a video to kind of show this, but I mean, you can imagine what that would be like, where for some students it might be holding a piece of paper with a word and maybe incorporate some movement, or for some kids that are not verbal, I think they threw out the idea that student could have a word programmed into their, even like a Big Mac or a single response like that, but just that idea of incorporating kids to become that sentence, I think was a nice idea, and to kind of help with this. Okay. All great ideas. Let's keep watching here. It's gonna kind of conclude here shortly, but let's just see the end of this this module.
Remember, in predictable chart writing, the sentence stem is the most important part. It is the repeated part. It is the predictable part. It includes the words students will first learn to say using their core vocabulary communication systems, and it is the first part students can learn to read and write. Maintaining an emphasis on core vocabulary for the sentence stems that are used to write about a range of topics will lead to the repetition with variety that is so critical to learning these important beginning communication and literacy skills. It's important to plan ahead for predictable chart writing lessons. First, the chart title and the sentence stem need to be defined. The choices that will be presented to students to contribute to the chart writing process must be determined, and how these choices will be presented must be understood. There are many ways choices may be presented, including the use of partner-assisted scanning, eye gaze, manipulation of tactual objects, or pointing to symbol choices. Planning guides are available for download from the Project Core website. This concludes the module. Your feedback is important.
All right. Okay. Bear with me, folks. I had too many windows open. Let me get back to where we want to be here. Okay, so I want to bring us back before we take a look at kind of the last module that we hope to accomplish today. I wanted to bring you back to that implementation resources section. So looking at these again, these are all Project Core site. They mentioned the tools again at the very end of that video that we watched. So instructional planning forms, let's just pull that up again here. We had looked at the one, just a simple, possibility. If it works for you, if that's helpful to you, you can use these. There's a planning sheet for shared reading, but then if we go down, predictable chart writing, for planning purposes, just a couple really simple questions. If you're planning for a writing lesson, what do you think your chart title is going to be? That sentence stem they talk about as being very important. It's a predictable part that will kind of help lead the kids into using more core words, the range of options, and how you present those. So just really just some things to kind of help you think through and plan ahead. And then I'll just go to, remember these tools are kind of for observation purposes or fidelity of implementation. And so again, some of you that are maybe going to try some of these out and or doing it for the class, let's take a look at the tool here that someone might use to give you some feedback if you're trying these. So if I go to predictable chart writing, we just get the little tool here. It looks like this. And you can see what we have here. So just some of these, some of the things that were talked about in the video here. Are these things happening? Thinking about the sentence stem, what choices does the student have? Getting into that idea of using chart paper or something similar for the writing activity using sentence strips. Just tools to kind of help you self-evaluate. Hey, I'm trying to use this strategy. Am I using, are all the components in place? So just an opportunity for kind of a self-reflection and or an observation tool that someone could use to talk with you about this. Okay, let's jump. This last module that we were going to accomplish today, alphabet and phonological awareness, integrating core vocabulary into that area. Let's start with that, and there'll be a couple stopping points for discussion and activity as we go along. So let's jump into this one right now.
Welcome to the Project Core Professional Development Modules. This module, Alphabet and Phonological Awareness, Integrating Core Vocabulary, is designed to help you integrate the use of the universal core vocabulary in the context of alphabet and phonological awareness instruction for students with significant cognitive disabilities who are developing symbolic communication skills. Project Core is being conducted by the Center for Literacy and Disability Studies, a unit in the Department of Allied Health Sciences at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Learning the alphabet requires students to learn many things. They have to recognize the 52 distinct upper and lowercase letters and the 26 names for those letters. They must also understand that the upper and lowercase letters are related to each other. Eventually, they must learn the sounds associated with each letter, and they must learn to write or select each of the letters for use in spelling and writing. Phonological awareness is different from but related to alphabet knowledge. Phonological awareness focuses on the ability to identify and manipulate words and sounds in spoken language. It absolutely requires that students can hear, but importantly, there is evidence to suggest that individuals who are deaf develop skills related to phonological awareness after they learn to read and spell. At its earliest stages, phonological awareness focuses on distinguishing words from one another. This helps students hear or otherwise recognize the difference between core words like he and she, sane and some, in and on. As students begin to develop the ability to distinguish between words, they begin to be able to recognize the number of syllables or parts of the words. They also begin to recognize words that begin with the same sound and words that rhyme or end in the same way. In Project Core, our focus is on the development of symbolic communication for students with significant cognitive disabilities who are beginning communicators. For decades, these students have not had access to academic instruction that emphasizes the alphabet and phonological awareness because these students lack many skills that have traditionally been deemed prerequisites to learning abstract symbols like the letters of the alphabet. Collectively, we believed that students had to first understand concrete symbols before they could learn abstract symbols like the alphabet. In recent years, we have come to understand that students learn symbols we teach them. Students do not have to master concrete symbols before we start to introduce and use more abstract symbols. This understanding led us to begin teaching the universal core vocabulary to students with significant cognitive disabilities and supports our efforts to teach the alphabet and phonological awareness. It will take time and many, many varied experiences, but given enough opportunities to learn, students with significant cognitive disabilities can learn the alphabet and develop phonological awareness while they are learning to communicate using symbols that represent the words in the universal core. There are many ways that we can help students learn the letters of the alphabet. The one thing you want to avoid is doing the same activity over and over again. Students can learn letter names and shapes by repeating the same thing over and over, but they won't learn what to do with letters if we teach in this way. Unfortunately, it isn't enough for students to be able to identify or name the letters. They must understand that those letters represent sounds and have meaning in the words we're trying to read and spell. Instead, teach the alphabet by reading alphabet books, pointing out letters in the environment and during everyday activities, providing opportunities to play with letter shapes and sounds, reinforcing letter names and sounds in reading and writing activities, and using student names. Let's look at each of these a little more closely. Alphabet books are especially useful when teaching the alphabet because they use individual letters in meaningful contexts that are typically supported by single words and pictures. Most people are familiar with the early childhood board books that focus on the alphabet. They pair each letter with a word and a picture, such as when A is paired with the word apple and a picture of apple. In the last decade or so, there has been an explosion of alphabet books that you might find in your local school or your public library. In fact, a quick search on Amazon results in A to Z alphabet books that focus on construction, dinosaurs, airplanes, boats, artists, the ocean, and numerous other topics. In addition, there are books about individual letters or groups of letters. You can also find hundreds of alphabet books at Tar Heel Reader. Whatever the source of your books, be sure to focus on the letters, their names and their sounds, in addition to the content of the book as you are reading. While reading alphabet books to focus on letters, names, and sounds, you can also talk about the content of the book using the Universal Core Vocabulary. Consider this page from an alphabet book about shopping on the Tar Heel Reader site. After reading M is for Macy's and pointing out the letter N, an adult might use the Universal Core to model, I want to go, while pointing to want and go on the core board. She might also say, I like it, while pointing to like and it. Pause for activity 1.
All right, I'm going to pull that up on the screen. If you have a paper version of that, feel free to pull that out. But we'll keep it up on the screen here, and I think I'll ask everybody to let's go through kind of what the task is here, and I'll ask everybody to just spend a few minutes and jot your own ideas down, and then we'll talk about it. But okay, what have we got here? You know, the beginning of the video was trying to talk about the value of using something like an alphabet book. It's part of the literacy experience, not the complete package, of course. But the directions here below. For each picture, generate text for the page as if you were, for example, creating a book. So here we have, this is just your example filled in. We've got a picture of a starfish, obviously. So potential text, if you were creating this book, or you might find a book that has this, but the text below this picture might be super starfish, and what could be some core comments, okay? And so you can see here a couple examples in our example here. It's different, using or it's on the sand. So the comments there with several of our core vocabulary words used as comments. So again, the idea would be if a teacher was using an alphabet book, some example of comments that could be used to get kids involved in responding with their core vocabulary. Okay, so I'll leave this up here and take an opportunity either on your own handout or just some jot on a piece of paper. Here's our 3 examples. We've got obviously 3 potentially high interest animal pictures here. would you go ahead and take an opportunity, propose what text might be for that page, and then a couple core comments that you think you could use. So let me just give you a few minutes to do that, and then we'll come back together as a group. Okay, let's just open it up for discussion. Let's just go one at a time here. Our first photo here of a crab on the sand. Would anybody want to offer their suggestions? What potential text, and then potential core vocabulary comments that could be used with the student?
You could just say the crab is on the sand, using the word on.
As a core comment?
Yes.
Yeah. You bet. He's on the sand. Absolutely.
I do not like his pinchers.
Okay. Do not like, that could be, yeah. And you can imagine, maybe a student, if you're reading a book with some text that goes along with the crab here, if the student had a reaction like, oh, maybe a student had experienced, or something like this, or they know that the pinchers could hurt them, you could attribute meaning. Do not like the pinchers, that kind of thing. Others ideas?
I went along that same lines. I at first put, look, where is he going? And then the core comment, I mean, that's part of a core comment, I guess, too, but do you want to help? Asking the student, and then not a good idea.
I like that.
For a text, I just thought of crab. The crab is on the beach or on the sand.
Okay. And yeah, all good ideas. And again, I'm just looking back here. I mean, the idea, now you could use these as, these could be pictures from a whole variety of books, but there's also this idea that some books might be more alphabet books. So like in this, maybe the starfish came from a book on, looking at S. So super starfish would be the text. given you then the opportunity to comment. It's different. It's on the sand and so forth. So yeah, I mean, you guys are right. These pictures could be used in a whole variety of types of books, but one option would be they might be a part of the alphabet book per se. So all great comment ideas. And of course, these tend to be, for many students, they'd be high interest kind of pictures, I think. How about the dolphins? Anybody want to share their ideas?
Maybe where will they go?
Okay, like that. We see them swimming.
I had delightful dolphins under text, and look, they are all the same.
Very good. Yeah. So,
I had can you count them?
I like that. And again, I mean, when you said that, can you count them? I think about the wait time that they, our videos are kind of really reinforcing that, wait time, to give kids a chance, because maybe a student may try to count them, but just giving sufficient wait time for some interactions with them. Well, what about the octopus? Ideas on that one?
It turns in the water.
Good.
He's on the bottom.
Okay.
The ocean.
Absolutely. On the bottom. Good. I'm thinking of like again, for many of these things, just that idea, again, attributing meaning. If any of these pictures particularly excited a student and they looked really interested, you could suggest that octopus, do you like him? That type of thing. Absolutely. Or look, you're looking at the octopus if the student is pointing or something like that. So good. Let's continue.
Playing with letters is easy to do with young children. There are so many toys and games that appeal to young children that focus on letters. They can paint with letter-shaped sponges, use letter-shaped cookie cutters with Play-Doh, and play with magnetic letters on the whiteboard. You can find toys off the shelf at your local toy store that feature the alphabet, and the number of apps that now provide practice with letter names and sounds can be overwhelming. Unfortunately, most of these become age inappropriate or unappealing to children by the time they reach their 6th or 7th birthday. Many children with significant disabilities will remain interested in these activities for a few more years, and they are certainly age appropriate anytime during the primary grades. But it becomes increasingly challenging to find relevant alphabet toys and games for older students. However, older students might enjoy many of the apps or computer games that are currently available. Others might enjoy playing card games with the alphabet. Simply by substituting a deck of alphabet cards with 4 of each letter, you can play a classic card game like Go Fish, during which Students can ask or show others the letters they seek. Instead of slapjack, you can plan slap the M, or whatever letter is the focus. These games have to be modified to make them accessible. But playing with the alphabet is one part of helping students learn the alphabet. In a more explicit way, you can plan to emphasize specific letters and letter sounds during reading and writing activities such as shared reading and predictable chart writing. During shared reading, you draw students' attention to the individual letter, especially those you think will be personally meaningful to each student, or those that appear in big, bold, clear print on the cover page, or at a different point in the book. During predictable chart writing, you can draw students' attention to the individual letters and sounds you are writing as you build the chart together. You can draw their attention to the letters when you revisit the chart and reread it and search for specific letters and words. You can also highlight individual letters as students work to rebuild the sentence after they've cut it into individual words. Student names provide another excellent way to teach the alphabet. One research study showed that students with significant cognitive disabilities are 10 times more likely to recognize the first letter of their first name than they are other letters in the alphabet. While we aren't 100% sure why this is the case, we do know that children are exposed to and pay attention to their name in print more than any other single word. Certainly, other words appear more frequently in their environment, but no other single word appears more frequently in their lives. It is critical that we take advantage of this natural opportunity to provide multiple meaningful repetitions across the day. Students can sign in each morning, sign up to participate in an activity, sign their name in the column indicating a lunch choice, sign their name on their work, and the list goes on and on. No other word provides more learning opportunities than a student's name. Given that the goal is to help students learn the letters in their names, avoid copying and tracing tasks. These tasks focus on the form and shape of the letters and take the focus away from learning to recognize and name letters and select or write them at will. Like teaching the alphabet, phonological awareness is best addressed through meaningful activities and interaction. You can work on some aspects of phonological awareness during alphabet instruction. For example, you can identify objects and photos of things that begin with the letter you are teaching. This focus on the sound the letter makes at the beginning of the word takes an alphabet activity and adds phonological awareness instruction to it. You can include raps, rhymes, or poems to your shared reading or morning group time. Developing an awareness of the rhymes that appear in raps, rhymes, and poems builds phonological awareness. Similarly, tongue twisters focus on the sounds at the beginning of the words and support the development of phonological awareness. There are also numerous sponge activities that focus on phonological awareness. The sponge activity are the quick little things you do between other instructional routines to soak up and take advantage of little bits of instructional time. For example, an adult might clap out the syllables in a student's name while calling them to join an activity. Adults might also get students to listen to words and decide if they are the same or different, or listen to the beginning or ending of words to decide if they are same or different. In Project Core, we are emphasizing instruction that integrates the universal core vocabulary into instructional routines, like those that support alphabet knowledge and phonological awareness. You can plan and evaluate your own alphabet and phonological awareness instruction by making sure it includes the following. First, you want to make certain that students have access to their own universal core vocabulary, or some other form of communication. It is vitally important that students have an individual communication system that meets their access needs. This communication system must be available to the greatest extent possible all day, every day. While adults should encourage and attribute meaning to all communication efforts, a personal system is required for students to learn to use symbols to communicate more conventionally. For example, in the context of discussing the first letter of a student's name, the adult might model same and different. Do Sarah and Sam start with the same letter or a different letter? Or in the same context, the adult may make a comment rather than ask a question. Sarah starts with S and Sam starts with S. They are the same letter, S. If the lesson is focused on letters, those letters must be available in a format that is accessible to all students. This means creating materials that offer high contrast colors for some students, using big, bold print for others, and providing access to Braille for others. It is always important for adults to describe the purpose of lessons, but doing this well in the context of teaching the alphabet and phonological awareness requires that the lesson links to something with more meaning than the letters themselves. In other words, adults can't merely say, "We're going to work on A," because students don't know what A is yet. Linking the lesson to the theme or topic being studied allows the adults to explain. A is for animals. Let's see what else has an A. Pause for activity 2.
I'm watching the clock here. I'm going to let them conclude here without doing activity 2. We may, activity 2, if you looked at it, is essentially kind of following up on what they just said, that, you know, don't just say, we're going to learn about an A today, but incorporate that into a theme or you know, a kind of a purpose. And activity 2 was kind of generating some ideas of what those things might be. So I think maybe next time we meet, we'll maybe do a recap and talk about that. But let me just let this last minute and a half finish up this lesson, and then we'll close.
As in all instructional routines, the adults in the room must learn to recognize, respond to, and expand on students' efforts to participate and communicate. For example, when the adult points out a letter in the school hallway, the student may reach toward it. The adult can attribute meaning by saying, "Do you want to look?" while pointing to want and look on the universal core board. Another student may touch the word make on his universal core board. An adult should recognize that communicative effort, repeat it by saying make and touching make on the student's universal core board, and then expanding on it by adding one more. In this case, the adult may say, "Make more," while pointing to make and more on the student's board, and then follow with, "We can make more letters." On the Project Core website, you will find a planning form that will help you plan alphabet and phonological awareness lessons that link with the theme or topics you are addressing in your classroom. You'll also find a self-evaluation observation form that will help you evaluate your lessons to determine if they have the features described in this module. This could...
Okay. So I think we'll make that a plan. We'll do a little bit of a recap when we meet next time of this, and on this the idea of alphabet and phonological awareness. So just this idea that we're trying to integrate some of those skills into the literacy instruction that's going on. The big focus of next time will be talking about independent reading and writing and what that might look like for some of your kids, but we'll talk about that at that time. But otherwise, it's about 4:30, and I think we'll go ahead and close now. And it sounds like we're going to get some interesting, potential interesting ice again tonight. So we'll see what tomorrow brings. Hopefully everybody, if you're driving somewhere, be safe now and be safe tomorrow. So thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Ron.
Thanks, Ron.
You bet. Thank you.
Thank you.